experiences. So where, really a full, I would say, 360 kind of journey where it's when she's home, what is she doing? Is she online or is she watching TV? When she's going to work, what is she looking at? When she's in the office, what does she see? So kind of like a full 360 mapping. I hope that answers it.
Yeah, no, that's helpful because, okay. All right, so to keep going, we can always come back to that. But so you're not just only looking at, you're trying to get a map of a little, there's one that you can talk about passive purchases more narrow versus a day in the life. And it sounds like you start with a day in the life.
Yeah, so it starts with like a day in the life. So once we have our demographic set, we then look at, okay, according to this demographic, what are they predominantly watching on TV? What are they searching for online? When they're out, going to work, where do they predominantly work? Is it more of a residential area or is it more of a corporate area? And what would they see and where could we captivate them at different points in their, in their daily activity? And, whether it's any out-of-home advertising or if it's more online advertising. So is it, more kind of flooding a bunch of websites that they would predominantly look at, or is it sending them, email blasts? Are they checking their emails regularly? So it's really looking at different ways from a digital standpoint, as well as from like an out-of-home, above-the-line standpoint, where you can catch them in their, in their actual daily activity and routine.
Okay. All righty, and then So as you're going through, from there, you're spend the time collecting. You've got the demographic, and then so let me just go back to that question because this is something that we keep wrestling with. Is that so? We will do traditional segmentation to pick a segment, and then that will represent. Let's just say it represents 20% of the population,
right.
But it feels pretty general. So when you start to map down, if you can kind of explain, when you map down to these individual level, how do you deal with scaling, to get the specificity down at the, kind of your persona? It sounds like you're developing these personas, but how do you deal with specificity and scaling?
Yeah, so, when it comes to scaling, there's two different ways that I've gone about it in the different companies that I've been at. One of the ways is first you do it by geography, so by a city-by-city approach, basically. So you pulled out like your top, let's say, 10 to 20 cities, and you make sure that you have a mix between East Coast, Central, and West Coast. From that point, you look at the demographic, like the general demographic, and then you also look at the core demographic. So what's predominantly there? Who do you want to market to out of the general, and then who's your core? From that point, getting it down, that's where we start to do the second piece is the research and the focus groups. So you actually bring these consumers in and you start to ask them the appropriate questions. So we would basically ask them about a day in the life and, what they're looking at, what they're seeing, what catches their attention. We've also done things like asking them about, email frequency. How often do you check your email? Do you read your mail? So, and that really answered questions. And it was different, I could tell you. It was different for every city that we went into, when it came to how we communicate with them. So if we were to send somebody a direct mail, how open would they be to actually looking at it and reading the content that's there? The same thing with an email. Who's really reading their emails or who's just looking at who the sender is and hitting delete? So it's really trying to figure that out. And then once we had that information, it's taking it even a step further. So if they were interested in, let's say, an email, a direct mail, or even searching on the internet, we would ask them what times they predominantly did it. So we would know even further down in detail what time to send an email or what type of dates would be good for a direct mail or what time should we be on TV or where, what kind of events should we schedule and where to really help the overall brand experience where you're going to maximize your demographic and the population.
So then how then did you, I understand like